Hello everyone, welcome to Freetime Event, Poolside Edition, an Hinata Anime x Komede Nagito Super Danganronpa 2 fan game. Yeah, this has been doing the rounds on TikTok because the game is like 10 years old now. And yeah, it reawakened my Komaino obsession, so this game gets a bit risque, and I'm going to skip those parts, of course, because like this game is free and you can find it on itch.io. You can play those parts yourself if you want. The only not safe for work thing I show on the channel is gore and death. I ain't showing sex in here. So yeah, let's put this show on the roll. What the fuck am I playing? The pool is obviously much safer than the ocean. I'm not saying that bad things can't happen in pools. They can, and do. But the chances are lower, generally speaking. Komeda skimmed one finger across the surface of the still water, sending ripples towards the hotel as the sun slowly set behind it. Of course, the chances that are present are what I have to think about. Personally... Shut up! You're making the food go bad. On the other side of the pool, Owari plucked what must have been the worst grape from the bunch and lobbed it at Komeda's head. Ouch. He winced reflexively before it even hit him, bouncing off its fluffy hair landing in the water with a splash. See, bad things can definitely happen at the pool. It's a grape, dude. He reached for it, but the grape had already drifted just out of range, and his fingers closed around empty water. Hinata watched from the safety of his cottage, wondering why he decided to come outside in the first place. There was a pleasant warm breeze swaying the palms in the distance. In another life, it would have been calming. Eating by the pool is supposed to be nice, but you running it and wasting grapes to it. She shoved another in her mouth, apparently too good to be ammunition. Yeah, it's kinda hard to tell who is talking. Normally you would have a name right here. Owari and her handful of grapes passed by Hinata's deck on the way to her own cottage, offering only an exasperated grunt as she left. With the slam of a door, she was gone, leaving him alone with Komeda. He dropped his gaze down the water rushing between the boardwalk, counting the beats in his head. And 3, and 2, and... So, the nature of vital possibilities are even more interesting to think about in a place that seems safe, because it means that the actual event would have to be somewhat absurd, assuming there are no other obvious factors or liabilities in place beforehand. Komeda continued watching the tiny green grape bob in the water. Hinata sighed. There was still time before the end of the day. Do you want to hang out? Do you want to hang out? Komeda looked up, apparently shocked. You want to spend time with me again, Hinata-kun? That's twice today. Surely there's someone else around who has a lot more to talk about. I doubt it. Yeah, I can't make a remotely Hinata sounding voice. And I'm trying my best to make at least one as, how should I put it, as fluffy as Komeda's. Hinata slipped between the sliding glass doors in the back of his cottage and then reappeared a few moments later on the boardwalk. His room was closest to the pool, and he considered that if this had been a real resort, maybe his would be the most expensive. He stopped next to Komeda, his shoes at the edge of the pool. Gonna go swimming? He knew the answer already, and braced himself for an empathetic reiteration of the dangers of water. Is that something you'd like to do with me? If so, I don't mind. He stood up and lightly touched Hinata on the shoulder with a smile. I am honored beyond words that you want to spend any more time with me than absolutely necessary. Inata's posture straightened as the hand slid down his arm before returning to Komaeda's side. I'll go get changed. Also, apparently beyond words, he silently watched Komaeda disappearing behind the cottages. He kept staring at the corner, waiting for him to change his mind. When that didn't happen, he went to took off his socks and shoes, rolled up his pants, and sat down at the edge, dunking his feet in the cool water while he waited. After a few minutes, the sun drifted fully behind the hotel's silhouette, pulling the remnants of that day along with it. Oh, Inata-kun, you didn't want to put your swimsuit on? Komaeda reappeared and crouched down next to him, slender arms folding to balance on his knees. They both watched the grape drift by, still just out of reach. I never said I was going to swim, I just asked if you were. Inata-kun mumbled, kinking his foot towards the grape. Oh my god, stop being a fucking tsundere, bitch. He dunked below the surface before bobbing back up. Ah, so you wanted to watch me swim then? That's fine. I'm not particularly good at swimming or anything, so I don't know how entertaining it will be, but I'll try not to bore you. I never said I wanted to watch you swim either. Nata pulled his feet out of the water and stood. Komaeda looked up at him, eyebrows upturned. I'm sorry if I misunderstood. Please tell me what you like to do. You were kind enough to accompany me to the library today, so we'll do whatever you like. Inata showed on his lip for a moment. No, it's getting late, so we should stay at the hotel. I'll swim. Without waiting for a response, Inata turned to head back to his room, leaving wet footprints behind. Evidence found at the scene, he thought, leading into Inata's cottage. He fished his swim trunks out of the drawer and once changed took a moment to glance into the bathroom mirror. He nodded himself and took a deep breath. His talent probably wasn't swimming, but who knows? Maybe he'd get into the water and the memories would simply come flooding back. The wet footprints were dry by the time he returned, and something else was different. Komaeda had turned on the jets in the pool, agitating the sealants and filling the air with a soft hum. He also turned on the underwater lights, transforming the whole thing into a glowing rectangle of tropical teal. He was already in the water, in the shallow end, close to the fuck me. He was already in the water, in the shallow end closest to the cottages, sunk into his ears. Long tendrils of his hair sprayed out, floating on the surface. He lifted his head slightly. Welcome back, Inata-kun. Yep. It was warm out, as always, but Inata was preemptively hugging his own arm in preparation for the chill of the water. It's refreshing, he reminded himself, and getting in slow was always worse, right? Yeah, just throw yourself in, dude. Get that temperature shock out of the way. Stilling his nerves, he took a short running leap at the middle of the glittering pool, a few feet from where Komaeda huddled near the wall. Stilling his nerves, he took a short running leap at the middle of the glittering pool, a few feet from where Komaeda huddled near the wall, and cannonballed into it. He plunged nearly to the bottom, trailed by an explosion of tiny bubbles, before unfurling and rocketing to the surface with all his might. It feels great! He announced loudly, because yelling made him warmer, shaking his head to sling water. His antenna popped up determinedly, feeling a few more drops littered skywards. I can't read. Komaeda laughed, shielding his face. You are much braver than me. I got in slowly, even though that always feels worse. Yeah, knowing Komaeda's luck, he might break his coccyx in the goddamn pool if he tries to cannonball into it. Inata wiped more water out of his eyes. Of course it does. I guess. Kameda tipped his head back against the tiles, closed his eyes, and it was quiet for a moment aside from the steady hum of the jets. Inada took off for the other side of the pool, kind of doing freestyle, but it quickly turned into kind of a breaststroke, okay? He made his way slowly to the deep end, and by the time he touched the far tiles with his fingertips, it felt clear that swimming was not his talent. It was still a little nostalgic to be in the water. He dipped under again and pushed off the wall, returning to the shallow end to complete one unimpressive lap. Do you like swimming, Nada-kun? It's fun to paddle around, but I'm not really good at it. I kinda thought that maybe... Let's be honest. I thought maybe it'd be cool if swimming was my talent. Hinata was a little ashamed to admit it now, after so obviously proving that it was not. Hinata was a little ashamed to admit it now, after so obviously proving that it was not, but it was a topic Komaeda was usually interested in regardless. Oh, that would have been a wonderful talent. He clapped his hands together, scattering a few glistening drops. I can speak! You could have the body of a swimmer, Hinata-kun. Hinata sputtered at the thought that Komaeda had taken any note of what sort of body he had. My brother in Christ. If you look at the guy, of course he's going to be taking note of your body. Oh my fucking god. I don't... Not really. But he could, if you swam. Komaeda shivered a little and hugged himself. Your build will support it. Nothing like mine. Your build was supported. Nothing like mine. I don't have the stamina for it to begin with. Yeah, I guess not. Hinata mumbled, eyes unconsciously wandering over the tips of Komaeda's collarbone. And anyway, I'm sure your talent is even more interesting than swimming. Don't say that. That puts a lot of pressure on me. What if he's right though? Hinata glanced at the sky, still far more beautiful than anything he encountered in his daily life. What about Komaeda, man? God, this guy doesn't have working eyes, working brain, working ears. Fucking idiot. And a spark of energy pulsed through him. Yeah, the scene with Komaeda literally has the lying disease and tells Hinata, like, Hinata knows he has a disease that makes him say the opposite of what he wants to say. And he tells Hinata to leave him alone, that he doesn't want to see him, that he wants to be alone. And Hinata is like, okay, I'll leave. Like, my brother in Christ is obviously asking you to keep him company. Are you stupid? The answer is yes. The guy doesn't know what an octagon is. What if his talent was something more unbelievable? Something cosmic? Something like ultimate luck? Ultimate luck, huh? I also have that. It would make sense that he hadn't remembered a truly unusual talent simply by doing average activities. Maybe you're right, though. Maybe it's something weird, like luck. I sincerely hope it's nothing at all like luck. Komaeda smiled at him. Maybe it's a craft. What if you're surprisingly very good with your hands? Okay. He walked 2 fingers across the water surface, going for a small stroll with his hands before it found a good place to start tracing intricate patterns in the waves. Why would that be surprising? Komaeda just laughed and went back to playing. He cupped his hands around the water in front of him, squeezing tiny geysers out of it through the space between his thumbs. Hinata watched in mesmerizing little bursts. Hinata watched the mesmerizing little burst. He usually did that in pools too. Everyone probably does that in pools. Yeah, it's like being in a shower and just extending your arm and letting the water flow out, and it's like, I'm a waterbender. Yeah, if someone tells you they never did that, either they're a liar or they don't own a shower. Then there was silence again, aside from the rhythmic splash of Komaeda's tiny geysers. After a few beats, Hinata decided to return the gesture, squeezing the water harder to get higher splashes before his competitive streak turned him into attacks. He angled his hand, the little water blob splashing close to Komaeda until he got it just right and finally squirted him right in the face. Yeah, I bet he wanted to do something in his face. Alright. He immediately stopped to shield himself. Hinata-kun, I understand the impulse to fire on me, but the chlorine hurts my eyes. Sorry. Hinata laughed like a scolded child and backed off, sinking to the water to blow bubbles instead. When he ran out of breath and the bubbles buttered to a stop, he lifted his head. So I guess if you're not really swimming, there's not much to do in a pool. I'm thinking Komaeda can come up with something you can do in a pool. The ever-shifting glow cast strange reflections over Komaeda from time to time, making him appear to be moving when he was not. It's just relaxing to feel weightless for a while. He closed his eyes and spread his arms. Hinata could see his familiar gestures to the water, but the choppy surface made his arms look wobbly. Our bodies get to momentarily forget the strain of being alive, even while surrounded by something that could kill us so quickly. That's the opposite of relaxing. Hinata pressed his back to the wall catty corner to him, trying to enjoy the weightlessness effect without thinking about death. Of course, the more he tried to not think about death, the more he thought about death. Yeah, it's kinda like try to not think of a pink elephant, and suddenly all elephants are fucking pink and you can't think of any other thing. And then the grape flew by. Hinata snatched it out of the water. Haha. It was half brown and already dented on one side. He held it triumphantly and squeezed a little. Oh! Komaeda gave a smile with applause. Congratulations, Hinata-kun. Thanks. He held it up for a few more moments, turning it in the light like a rare gem. I dare you to eat it. Komaeda's applause stopped. What? Why would I do that? He looked sincerely worried. There was really no good answer. Because I dared you? It's been soaking in chemicals, and it looks like it's already rotten. If you're saying you think a rotten person like me should eat rotten fruit, then just say that. No, I mean... He squeezed the grape too hard, and a little mush spit out from the top. I was kidding! It's just something kids do with their friends. Oh. Yeah, this guy has no friends, no family, no dog, no nothing. He wouldn't know that. Komaeda's worry faded and he laughed. I guess I wouldn't know much about a game like that. Hinata sank down a bit. The water lapped at his cheek. Well, we're all supposed to be friends here and stuff, so we can play dumb games like that with each other. Haha, don't tell me the others that they're supposed to be friends with me. Haha, don't tell the others that they're supposed to be friends with me. They'd probably be upset. Or maybe they'd be happy that they can make me eat rotten food whenever they want. Hinata stood up again abruptly and chucked the mushy grape towards the cottages. He landed in the stream below one of the... Hinata stood up again abruptly and chucked the mushy grape towards the cottages. he landed on the stream below with one final splash. I think you have to lose a game before I think you have to lose a game before someone can make you do a dare as a penalty, so if any luck was involved, it would probably be a bad idea to play with you. It's probably a bad idea to do anything with me, he laughed. Hinata laughed uncertainly along with him, unsure of what that meant exactly, but the mood somewhat felt a little lighter. Komaeda moved then, pushing himself away from the wall to swim closer. The light reflected on his cheekbones, and his skin looked completely white in the greenish glow. Let's say I somehow lost a game of chance, and you can make me do anything as a penalty. What would you ask me to do, Hinata-kun? This had to be a trick question. Hinata pushed away from the wall too, so he could escape if necessary. He looked around at the windows of the other classes, expecting to see his disgusted classmates watching them, but the blinds were all drawn. You already seem to like to do whatever I tell you for some reason, so it's kinda hard to say. Komaeda swam closer. That may be true. So you must be constantly thinking of things you could tell me to do, just to see if I do it or not. Just to see how willing I am to please an ultimate. That wasn't entirely false. That's a very not, interested thing to say. What? I mean, it's a game what it fucks, so. Hinata had thoughts about lots of stuff. Komaeda's willingness to do things could have been among them. After all, he had already done quite a few things, though Hinata couldn't remember now if any of it had been specifically at his request, or if it had just sort of happened. Most of the things they did together just sort of happened. Hinata lowered his voice, even though he knew that sounding suspicious immediately made it suspicious. Would you seriously do anything I told you to do? Komaeda laughed quietly and flicked some water at him, pelting Hinata gently in the chest. Of course not. But I would do anything that helped you reach a greater hope. Oh. It sounded obvious when he said it. Obvious, and yet Hinata realized he didn't actually have a good grasp of Komaeda's definition of anything or hope. He was about to ask, but Komaeda stood up suddenly. Eyes wide, wet hair clinging to his neck. He spread his arms again, dragging water up that cascaded through his fingers. Don't you want to know what I would ask you to do? He was reminded once again that Komaeda was just a little bit taller. Not really. Hinata took a step back. You're just gonna say something weird, like you want me to kill you, right? Haha, what exemplary answer. Exactly what I expect from you, Hinata-kun. Guess I'm just too predictable. He had to catch his breath between thoughts, his voice wavering with excitement. But I couldn't make you do that. It has to be something you choose on your own. Otherwise, it wouldn't be your hope that you're fighting for. It would be mine. Right. Hinata didn't notice before, but the glittering water made Komaeda's eyes seem like they were glowing. You wonder if his own eyes look like that right now too. The truth is, if we're friends enough to play a game together, and you would trust me enough to offer, then anything I could ever ask you to do would have been already fulfilled. That's not really a dare. I was almost disappointed. Haha, I see. Haha, see, I told you I didn't know much about this game. So, let's play. So let's play something then. You actually want to play with me? His voice edged on delirious for a split second before easing back into light. Play what? I'll think of something. Okay then, I'll leave it up to you. Komaeda relaxed back into the water with a pleasant sigh. He then turned to paddle towards the deep end. He then reached the wall. Hinata watched him paddle back slowly. Do you want to race? Komaeda laughed and took a deep breath. I'm already a little tired from that, so let's just say you won. Okay, I won. There was another long silence. Let's play rock, paper, scissors. Hinata blurted out before he really stopped to think about it. Oh, are you sure, Hinata-kun? Being questioned made it seem like a bad idea, but it was too late to back out now. Yeah, why not? I can't think of anything else. Well, alright. Best 2 out of 3. Ready? Best 1 out of 6. That doesn't mean anything. What does that mean? If you win at all, you win. If you win at all, you win. Okay, whatever. Let's just go. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot! Scissors. Scissors, oh scary. Komaeda gently rocked through Hinata's fingers, destroying his snippers like a child smashing action figures together. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot! Paper can be powerful too, but not more than this, I suppose. Snip. Hinata's paper suffered a devastating blow. 2 in a row doesn't mean anything. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot! Let's try scissors again. Are you trying to kill me? Hinata's scissors shattered on the Komaeda's fist. Rock. Hinata's rock was suffocated by Komaeda's single sheet of paper. Isn't this sort of like we're holding hands? Let's try rock again. Hinata finally made a rock that snuffed out like a candle. Sorry, Hinata-kun's rock. You have one more turn, but it's probably pointless to continue. Here, I'll give you a hint. A hint? At rock, paper, scissors? Yeah, well, a big hint. I'm going to throw scissors next. That's not a hint. Then let's play. Let me just save, cause I don't know this from the back of my hand, you know. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock. After being literally told the answer, it seems dumb to pick anything else. Hinata kept his fists firm and steady, and Ashley whispered, Rock, as he prepared to actually beat Komaeda. A bug. Some kind of horrible bug landed on Hinata's rock. Well, on his thumb. It was black and fierce, and it could swear look bloodthirsty. It made a high-pitched squeak as his other hand erupted out of the water to stop it. Komaeda jumped, startled by the sudden motion, and when the drop settled, Hinata looked down at his hand. He'd accidentally torn paper. Komaeda's Caesar gesture melted away, and he grabbed Hinata's fist. Hinata-kun, are you hurt? He checked his palm for a gruesome sight, but the bug had apparently escaped. He checked his palm for a gruesome sight, but the bug had apparently escaped, though not before leaving a tiny red bite on him. I'm fine, I think. Sorry, Hinata-kun. Let's not play any more games, okay? Yeah, I get it. Even though he won all 6 rounds, Komaeda still looked kind of defeated. Are you gonna make me do a penalty? Terror seized him. His brain formed a collage of horrors spliced together with regret. Komaeda's shoulders slumped. I think you've been punished enough. It was just a bug. Because it was just rock, paper, scissors. Sorry, Hinata-kun, it was selfish of me to agree to this. Huh? It was my idea, though. Well, don't worry about it too much, Nato offered. Komaeda nodded, and then the sound of the night and the pool and the wind and the trees crept back into both of them and lingered. When they first met, Hinata had considered Komaeda easy to talk to. He was still as talkative as ever, so Hinata briefly wondered if lulls in conversations were somehow his fault. It's definitely not my fault. Welcome at the lounge, Hinata turned and started inspecting the pool itself. He found the source of the churning waters, and entertained himself by shoving his finger to one of the jets in the wall. It was pushing water out so hard that it rippled against his skin, and it was quite satisfying to plug it up completely. He heard the motor strain as the other jets worked harder to compensate, pulsing powerfully and breaking the surface every time he did. Is this nice? This is nice, isn't it? Inara didn't look up. What's nice? We don't need pointless small talk to spend time with each other. You could tell from the tone of his voice that Komaeda smiled when he said that. But he was always smiling, wasn't he? Is this his way of getting me to start a conversation? Sorry, I don't really know what else to talk about with you. Hinata didn't mean to say it quite so bluntly. That's how it came out. He kept playing with the jet. There was a small splash, maybe the sound of his hand dropping into the water. I really mean it, Hinata-kun. I actually like when it's quiet. It's comfortable. Maybe not for you, though. He let out a half-hearted little laugh. Now I really didn't know what to say. Hinata crammed his finger all the way in the jet, and the others groaned as they strained to pump out more water. He had an overwhelming sensation that someone should be scolding him for this behavior, and this thought was distracting enough that he didn't notice Komaeda as swam up behind him until he heard him speaking softly over his shoulder. Hinata still expecting to be scolded. I'm sorry there's not much to do with me when we're in a public place. He was alarmingly close suddenly. Hinata felt one finger running slowly down the length of his spine on the water, stopping just above the waistband of his suit. I'm sure it's shameful to even be seen talking with me. The tip of his fingers dipped between the elastic to rub Hinata's hip bone, and some extremely untrustworthy part of him wanted to forget that they were in Sam Komaeda got the dial and returning. Yeah, okay, I think. Oh! After all, he couldn't say anything if Hinata's tongue was okay. Always being a part of the biological part of him, the tiny part of him that is simply good at skateboarding, all these searches. Hinata whipped around to face him, his back to the jet, hoping it would wash away the lingering feeling of touch. It's not that I'm ashamed to talk with you. His voice was awfully quiet for someone who wasn't ashamed, but it's unable to bring something to say anymore. His mouth shut, eyes silently pleading with Komaeda to back up just a little bit. His cottage was so close, and it's almost bedtime anyway. They should probably get out so they could, but Komaeda backed off, and the air returned to Hinata's lungs. We can get out of the pool if you want, Hinata-kun. I was about to suggest it myself. He exhaled in relief, comforted by the rare moment that their thoughts and plans actually line up. I think they line up more often than you think. He moved to stand up again, but a warm stirring in the pit of his stomach stopped him, and he almost groaned audibly. It was already too late. He shivered as a chill current flowed through the mesh of his swimsuit. He shivered as the chill current flowed through the mesh of his swimsuit, feeling colder than before in his heated skin. The jet stream continued to plummet into his back, but still did nothing to dull the tingling sensation on Komaeda's fingers had been. It forgot to bring a towel, of course, in the not-taut fabric of his swimsuit favors, okay? He swallowed and sank back down slowly. You can go first. Are you alright? Yeah, I don't know the shortest off the back of my hand. Let's stay in the water. I'm fine. You can go ahead of me. He sputtered, but he could tell Komaeda knew. He always knew. He could see it in his eyes when they widened just a little. Hinata was already shaking his head when Komaeda opened his mouth again. If you need any help, you know you can always ask me. Hinata thought what help from Komaeda usually entailed when they were alone together and choked back a scandalized gasp. I'm scandalized, the guy I've been possibly fucking wants to fuck me. Yeah, this came out ages ago, guys. I barely remember any of this. His gaze settled on Komaeda's smile, lips parted slightly. Hinata already knew what he looked like. Interesting. But this, what was he thinking? Not to mention, you can't hold your breath for that long. Hinata's voice cracked, much to his horror. Komaeda's brow furrowed for a moment in confusion, then furrowed in realization. Hinata-kun, first of all, you seem a little on edge. So even with my limited lung capacity, I wouldn't jump to any conclusions. Second of all, that isn't what I meant anyway. Through the current, Hinata saw the wobbly shapes that made up the other boy's form shift, and he felt the tail curling over the way. Through the current, Hinata saw the wobbly shape that made up the other boy's form shift, then felt toes curling over the waistband of his swimsuit, tugging it away from his skin just enough to let fresh, cool water drift over his stomach. Hinata propped himself backward with one hard stroke of his arms, and Komaeda, having lost his support, sank back and started to laugh. No way! Hinata hissed. Anyone looking could tell you're doing stuff on the water. The surface is choppy enough for plausible The surface is choppy enough for plausible deniability, I think, Hinata-kun. Komaeda shrugged and looked around. At least, I don't believe anything witnessed through the lens of shining water could hold up as proof in a class trial. I'm having trouble reading this. I'm not built for this, guys. Hinata was mumbling so close to the small words that the word came with bubbles instead. If someone thinks they saw us bloop something suspicious, then it's already as good as true. You don't to present evidence against gossip. Yeah, I was trying to read that. Exactly. Don't you think you're worrying too much over something that isn't even a matter of life or death? Yeah, it's not like this is, I don't know, name every country ever. No one's going to put you in prison for this. That's bad that happens. Komaeda ran one finger thoughtfully over his bottom lip, drawing attention to his mouth again. His filthy mouth. Hinata felt like he was much better at arguing when it was a matter of life and death. He sank down a little further, wishing the tightness of his swim to just go away already. Okay. Komaeda smiled cheerfully and pressed his back against the wall. I won't even touch you. Matching Hinata, he also slid further down until only his head and the tops of his shoulders were visible. The chill of the pool was no match for the heat on Hinata's face. He felt like he should have learned better than to play along by now, but perhaps it was because he learned that he lifted his chin to speak. Some help you are, then. Komaeda didn't miss a beat. His eyes widened slightly. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to fuck me, Inada-kun? Well, straightforward, isn't it? The question came out slow, echoing. The question came out soft and low, echoing across the surface of the pool, refracted perfectly by the waves to reach Inada's ears and no further. It shattered the vague, subconscious concentration that was keeping Inada's head above water, and before he knew it, he was sputtering chlorine and wiping out of his eyes. What? It's okay if you have. What? I don't know. Inada swallowed, mouth dry like he was stranded in the middle of the ocean. What about you? Have I thought about fucking myself? I mean, so many people probably tell this guy on the daily to go fuck himself, so he probably has. Seriously, everyone hates this guy, but what is his crime? Being mentally ill as shit? Dude's crazy, he needs a fucking therapist. I meant... That's actually a pretty interesting question. If you guys had like a clone of yourselves, would you fuck them? Like, just think about it. Would you fuck a clone of yourself? I personally don't think I would, but that's just because I'm not interested in fucking anyone. Well, I suppose so. I'm sure everyone has thought about something like that. Trash like me serves trash like me serves trash like me, right? Komaeda shivered. I wonder what I would do. The distorted image of his arm moved on the water, a pale greenish shape rapidly dissipating and reforming with each wave that passed. Inada could say that he couldn't see Komaeda's hand anymore. Would I treat myself roughly, unable to hold my scorn and having to see my own shameful, pitiful form before me? Or would I lose my nerve and do it gently? His voice cracked a little and Nata felt like he had been slapped in the face. Using my fingers to make sure I was ready. I'm not sure I deserve such kind of treatment. What do you think, Inada-kun? Yeah, long story short, they did stuff to themselves with their own hands, and yeah, I guess Komaeda said he wasn't going to touch him, and he kept that promise. Are you done? Isn't it a little unsanitary to do something like that in a public pool? Bitch, people pee in a public pool constantly. And if someone says they never did that, they're a fucking liar. Inada splashed him before he even finished speaking, a completely automatic response. Honestly, Komaeda is such a fucking rage baiter. It kinda feels like we should get out, now that you've claimed this pool as your own. Komaeda laughed while shielding himself from the next round of splashes. Don't worry too much, Inada-kun. That's what all the chlorine is for. You're horrible. Inada's voice had become a whine, but he could only muster so much energy in his post-dizzy talk haze, and his vengeful splashes quickly lost power. He slumped over, feeling defeated. I know. I've been telling you that along. Yeah. Let's see what happens here. Not for the first time, not for the last. Komaeda's smile read like a challenge, daring him to keep up. Inada moved quickly, pushing off the bottom of the pool to propel himself forward before Komaeda had time to react. Oh, okay. Oh, fuck. I don't know if this counts as too much not safe for work, but I'm not risking it. Okay, so long story short, Inada decided that it was time
Komaeda got a taste of his own medicine and basically used his hand on little Komaeda. Yeah, let's go with that explanation. Komaeda didn't limp again, suddenly burdened by the weight of the water surrounding him, squeezing against him while he grasped as quietly as he could. Hinata caught him when he slumped over, once again getting a rush from the sense of power that buoyancy afforded him. He pulled Komaeda's suit back up over his narrow hips while his mind churned out a new story for the situation. He became fatigued while we were swimming and I was helping him out, which had become an automatic process whenever they were alone together, waving small eyes at the very least excuse to be near him. Okay. A minute ago, he didn't have a story or an excuse for what I'd been doing, and even though the moment had passed, his stomach dropped at the thought. He would have looked like he was trying to drown him. The fleeting idea sat heavily in his stomach. At least some of his classmates would be understanding if that being his alibi. Either his guilt from an imaginary situation or the threatening water made his trek to the edge of the pool feel more difficult than it was been. They arrived at the instant ladder and he pushed Komaeda towards it. Come on, let's go, it's late. Komaeda dragged himself up the steps and Hinata followed, tensing up again as they started heading for the cottages. Is she just going to follow me into my room? You talk about it like if you would mind if he did that. It was earlier than he would normally come by. Yeah, but since we are two already together. Too early to seem safe sneaking around. Not that it had mattered for him just now that it was safe. He was practically tiptoeing as the nearest door, but Komaeda, who was now trailing an appropriate distance behind him, kept walking till he passed. Good night. Good night, Hinata-kun. Good night. He stopped watching the pale, dripping wisp that seemed to drift rather than walk to his cottage, and Hinata considered that perhaps he needed the weight of his usual attire to keep him from floating away. He vanished from sight when he slipped into his room, leaving behind a trail of pool water, and Hinata turned to his door and did the same. The usual pit of anxiety came to him immediately when his head hit the pillow. Is he going to come by tonight, even though we're just together? If he doesn't, what is he doing? Should I be worried? I don't know, man. Probably using some tool to basically mimic you. Probably going fucking crazy in his room right now. What if he doesn't come by? The thought was new, but he didn't have time to dwell on how absurd it was when he heard a soft knock at his door. His heart jumped like it always did. Who could blame him for being jumped in a situation like this? And his feet hit the floor before he even realized what he was doing. He was at the door in an instant, but he paused with his hand over the knob. And 3, and 2, and... So he opened it slowly, relaxing his expression. Sorry as always to bother you again, Hinata-kun. If you're sick of me from today, which I'm sure you must be, I can leave you alone tonight. Hinata stepped aside, opening his door just enough for a wisp of a person to sneak through. Better here than off doing something weird by yourself. Komaeda offered a tired smile as he stepped inside. Hinata didn't notice at first, but he brought something. His own pillow tucked on his arm, and though it definitely seemed worth commenting on the implications, neither of them mentioned it. Okay. Komaeda folded his jacket and placed it carefully on the couch like always. He crawled into Hinata's bed and loudly fluffed the pillow before collapsing messily on top of it. Hinata followed, pulling the blankets over them both. Good night. Hinata mumbled into the sheeted pool all the way to his mouth. Good night, Hinata-kun. His voice was small, directed at the wall. Thank you for
Thank you for letting me in again today.
Okay. Hinata rolled over. He could feel Komaeda's hair tickling his nose. He stuffed both his hands over his pillow. It was just not comfortable to sleep on his side. Komaeda shifted slightly.
Getting to spend so much time with you today made me very happy.
Go to sleep. Another hand moved just close enough that his fingers could feel the dip in the mattress where Komaeda lay beside him.
Good night.
Another closed his eyes, and after a few long minutes, sleep started to tug at the corner of his thoughts, distorting them at the edges. I wonder why he lets me sleep next to him like this. Ah, that wasn't right. He's lucky I let him sleep. He's lucky I let him sleep next to me like this. That was it. He likes being here, of course. He's always here. Yeah, there's definitely something wrong with Komaeda. And that was a Poolside, Freetime Event Poolside Edition. Yeah, I might play the theater version because there's a sequel to this. It depends. Yeah, I don't deal well with not safe for content. I get really bashful. I don't know what to tell you guys. Anyway, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Bye.